Hi, Elise Dewsbury here in another part of my How Not to Get Feedback from Elise vlog. I'm in the midst of my little mini series on the work of the scene. I've covered the moment before and delivering plot through either exposition or action. And now I want to talk a little bit about pointing forward. This goes to the opposite end of the scene from the moment before. It refers to how a scene begins. Pointing forward isn't necessarily how a scene ends, because pointing forward can happen at any point during a scene, but the purpose of pointing forward is to set me up for something that's going to happen in a later scene, to prepare me for something that's going to happen in a later scene. Um, and not to be confused with planting seeds, which I'm going to talk about in my next video, and I'll talk about what the very slight difference is between those two things. But in its simplest terms, pointing forward would be, two people who end a scene by saying, okay, well, let's say you have somebody on the phone and he says, okay, well, I'll see you at the hotel in 15 minutes. And then the next scene opens, or the next time we see that character, they're walking into the hotel to meet the person that they said they were going to meet. Um, or they talk about, oh, the big dance is coming up, can't wait to see it, the big dance. And then at some point, not necessarily the very next scene, but at some point a big dance will happen because the scenes have been pointing forward to that. Those are fairly, overt ways of doing it, but basically pointing forward is an extremely useful structural tool to keep us on track, to keep us understanding where we're headed, what's important, what we're headed towards. Like there's a big dance coming, so and it informs a scene because everything that everybody's doing is in preparation, or that at least some of the characters are doing is in preparation for this thing that's coming, and so we want to keep pointing forward to it. Now, you don't always have to deliver on this thing that you're pointing forward to. Let me explain what I mean by that. So let's say that Jack and Jill, or they bump into each other in a coffee shop. Oh, we haven't seen each other for a really long time. We really should get together. Yeah, let's have dinner next week at 8 o'clock. Okay, I'll pick you up at 8, and we'll go to have dinner on Tuesday at 8. Now, we're going to remember that that was the last thing that happened between Jack and Jill, that they planned a dinner date. So the next time we see them, I think the most important thing to know is that we are going to, as an audience, our memories are going to tell us that's the last time I saw them. So I'm expecting that the next time I see them will be at the dinner date. Now, there is no requirement that says that the next time we see these two people, that it has to be at this dinner date. You don't necessarily have to write this dinner date. You might have reasons why that's not really part of the plot, and you don't want to show that scene for any number of reasons. But for your audience, since the last time we saw these characters, they said they were going to have this dinner date next Tuesday at 8. The next time we see either of those characters, we assume that dinner date is the next thing that's going to happen. So what that means to you as a writer is you need to be really, really sure during the scene that you clarify for us very early on, has it not happened yet? So in other words, Jill runs on saying, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late, I have this dinner date, I can't be late. So immediately we go, oh, I see, so the dinner date hasn't happened yet. We need to know that. Or perhaps the next time we see Jack, he's coming into his apartment and throwing stuff down and on the floor and says, ah, this is the worst date I've ever been on in my life. So that we can think, or that was the worst meal I ever had. Something that lets us go, oh, okay, so the last time we saw them, they were planning this dinner date, now they've had it, and we're after the dinner date. It literally helps us track your timeline. And so once you have pointed forward, you have to remember that we are going to remember that pointing forward, and you have to keep us, you don't, as I say, you don't have to do the scene, you don't have to do the date scene, but you need to keep us informed about where we are in that timeline. And the sooner the better that you let us know. I think that audiences love to be sleuths. They love to be detectives and to be given just enough information to work out what they need, rather than to be spoon-fed absolutely everything. On the other hand, if they get too few clues or too far apart and they don't understand and they just get confused, then you're going to lose them. So there's a difference between going, oh, I think oh, maybe this is what's happening. Oh, I bet this is what's happening. There's a difference between being intrigued with your sleuthing and getting upset and frustrated and thinking, oh, I just can't follow this anymore. So that has a lot to do with the way you're having your scene work, with the moment before and pointing forward and being consistent and strong and being very, very aware that your audience is going to be remembering these things and needs to be sort of kept up to date as to where we are. So every scene should have some element of pointing forward. Another reason, let me just briefly say, another reason that I think it's important that every scene have some element of pointing forward is because if there isn't something about that scene that sort of locks us into the timeline and the forward motion of the plot, then you start to have scenes that could theoretically sort of appear in any order. And if you just switch them around and had them appear in a different order, it wouldn't make that much difference because they aren't necessarily connected by this concept of the forward moving nature of the plot. And I don't think that's a very good thing. I think if your scenes are sort of interchangeable and you could do scene 345 or scene 435 and it wouldn't make any difference, that's not necessarily a good thing structurally. And so that you always want to be pointing forward in some way that makes each scene need to be where it is, that it wouldn't function properly in any other moment in the show because it is connected to what came before and it's preparing us for what comes next, and therefore it must happen exactly when it's happening. So I think that's something to bear in mind. Always make sure you're pointing forward in some way and keeping track of what you pointed forward to. And that's it for this month, and we'll see you again next month.